Okay. Well, let's get started. Thanks for joining us for this webinar titled Plug and Play Analytics for SaaS Apps Built on MongoDB. That's part of what SlamData offers. And today we've got Michael Melmed, who is the VP of Ops and Strategy at US Mobile. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us today and sharing your story. And we also have Jeff Carr, who's not only the CEO, but the co-founder of SlamData. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Chris. How are you?
Pretty good. And just for kicks, we are in 3 different places. So Jeff is in Boulder, where the SlamData headquarters is, and Michael, you're in the outskirts of New York City. Yep. And I'm outside of Philadelphia. So today's agenda is to make sure everyone's on the same page with what SlamData is, and to understand what US Mobile is as well. And then to talk about the story of doing analytics on MongoDB for the business, to hear what Michael did prior to finding SlamData, and then what he did after. And he's going to walk us through a couple of key reports that he's built. And then through that, to understand what the impact is, we'll talk explicitly about it, but I think through the conversation we'll understand what kind of reports are being delivered to whom, and what function those reports have. And then we can do some Q&A at the end. So I think that's good for a start. And if you have any questions, I think the easiest thing to do is email me at chris@slamdata.com. I'm queuing questions already, so we'll add yours to the mix, and we will discuss them at the end. I'm also recording this, and you'll get the replay after a few days. So let's go over here and ask Jeff to kind of walk us through an overview of SlamData and talk about this graphic and what it means.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. And thanks to everybody that's joining today and learning a little bit more about what we're doing with the folks at US Mobile. So SlamData was really born out of this idea that modern NoSQL databases like MongoDB store data very differently, and reporting and analytics on them can be quite difficult, and requiring learning customized APIs and specialized languages and doing some other things that make things a little bit more difficult. So we decided that we should try to create a solution that would allow companies to do analytics and business intelligence and embedded analytics on NoSQL databases like Mongo the same way they're able to do that today, using a traditional relational database, and to do it in a native way. So the first thing to know about SlamData is it is a native NoSQL analytics application. And what we mean by native is it works on the data as it exists in the database. It doesn't require mapping or ETL or extracting and putting it into some other format, or all the different things that people have done or are doing to work around this issue. It works in the case of MongoDB. We actually work on the data as it exists in MongoDB, pushing all the computation directly down to the data source. We expose everything through an enhanced SQL dialect. So Michael will talk about this. In the case of US Mobile, this was something that allowed them to use tools or skills they already had, which was SQL, to be able to report and query against JSON or BSON-oriented data that they had stored in MongoDB. Additionally, SlamData is really more than just querying and visualization. It's actually an analytics application builder, and it allows you to build very complex, very interactive analytic workflows that can consist of queries and pivot tables and visualizations, and a variety of other things that interactive form elements, all kinds of things that allow you to build, again, not just queries and visualizations, but completely interactive workflows and applications that you can then white label and embed into your SaaS application. So if you're building an application on MongoDB, then SlamData bolts in simply and easily and becomes the entire reporting layer, in a matter of minutes. Today we're focused on MongoDB, but we also provide coverage for some other popular NoSQL databases like Couchbase, MarkLogic, And we also support Apache Spark for people that are doing stuff in Hadoop land. So that's basically what we're going to look at today. We allow you to, again, report and slice and dice and do all kinds of visual querying and reporting on MongoDB data as it exists in the database. And we also allow you to leverage the full power of SQL behind the scenes. So what does this really end up meaning in sort of one slide? It's about faster time to insights, less overhead, basically saving time and money. Majority of our clients today are people that are either going through some sort of cumbersome ETL and mapping process to get the data into a relational form and put it into either a relational database or something like Redshift or something like that, and then use a legacy BI tool, all of which cost time and money. Or there are companies that have built something custom and are just tired of taking care of it and having all the maintenance, all the enhancement requests, that come with any kind of analytics. People are always asking, can you add this? Can you change that? And valuable developer and engineering time is being spent on that. So in the current market, what we see is companies spending lots of time on mapping, cleanup, ETL, custom development, extraction, and then less time on actual analysis. With SlamData, we eliminate all of the mapping, cleanup, ETL, custom development, and allow you to focus on actually delivering analytics and real reporting to your end users. So it's like many things, it's all about saving time and money.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. So Michael, tell us a little bit about what US Mobile is and where it's going.
Yeah, sure. So US Mobile is a wireless carrier with nationwide 4G LTE network reaching more than 300 million Americans. When we launched a couple of years ago, our goal was to free customers from expensive and inflexible phone plans with long contracts, and instead give you the freedom to create your own plan, so you can always get exactly what you want. If you check out our plans page, you can see that you'll be able to create almost 400 different plan combinations. So you can always find the most affordable plan to connect your phone or tablet or car or alarm system. Our average customer pays $15 a month. So I encourage you to go check us out. There's a really good chance that you are paying way too much compared to the amount of talk, text, and data you actually use. Even if you use a lot of data or a lot of talk, oftentimes you don't need unlimited of everything. So that's where you can really save a lot with US Mobile.
Okay, and can you talk about what your role is there?
Sure. So I am the VP of Operations and Strategy. When I joined the company, I was leading up product and analytics. So in both roles, SlamData has been quite important to me. And in my role now, obviously I'm touching every aspect of our business.
Okay, and what kind of growth has the company experienced? Where were you guys a year or two ago, and
we are definitely one of the fastest growing new carriers in the country. Just in the last year, we've tripled from 10,000 customers to over 30,000, and we're only growing faster and faster every day.
Okay, and can you give us some idea of like the size of the company in terms of people? Because this is reporting and you're doing it across the company, so I think that would be helpful context.
Yeah, all in all, we have about 40 employees, and it spans different departments from the management team, finance, marketing, business development, product design, engineering. And we have a very large customer support team, which we make available 24/7. And it's always important that we keep that team up to speed on everything that's going on, so they can provide the best service.
Okay, great. That is good context. This next slide is nothing really to look at, but this is where you help us understand a little bit about the type of data, the size of data, and what you did in your first version of reporting. So what's in MongoDB, and can you describe a little bit of the data, what you're capturing, and what you need to report on?
Sure, and in fact, I'd even go right a little bit back before that. When I joined US Mobile, we had a SQL database, and it was a language that I knew very well and was very comfortable with, the tools and the reports and things that I could create. And it was only a few months later that we migrated from SQL to MongoDB, and that was conceptually good with me, but it was soon a bit shocking that all my tools were obsolete right after that, and the MongoDB query language didn't seem to have all that much in common with SQL, and yet the advantages of MongoDB that that I thought would be there with less joins and more efficient access to data, didn't fully pan out. I still needed to join data. I still needed to write complex queries, and in a way that I was struggling to do when we first made that transition.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you bring that up. And Jeff, maybe you could expand on this a little bit. But that's the trend where developers rule the roost. They pick the technology, and then sometimes businesses is left expecting the reports.
Yeah, the common theme we see in the market today is that developers in companies large and small are choosing new databases like MongoDB because it helps them build the applications they're trying to, sort of better, faster, more efficiently. They can deliver more flexibility, more features in a quicker time frame. And there's just a zillion reasons why developers are choosing them for very good reason. Unfortunately, the analytics department or folks usually end up bearing the brunt of that because they're typically not involved in the decision to move to a NoSQL database. They just end up on the backside of it having to deal with analytics and reporting, and as Michael pointed out, having tool sets that just aren't matched for that. So they end up it's a bit of a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, so Michael, what were some of those original reports that you were running off SQL that you liked? What were some of the key things that you were looking for, and what were you using to do the reports?
Yeah, so as a wireless carrier, our database was pretty robust. We had millions of data points, from customer data, device data, order data, usage data, and there are only so many reports that our engineering team could build to put in our admin portal. There was limited amounts of data that we could have in any GUI or front end reporting tool that we might have connected to our website. So really, I was doing all types of ad hoc analyses and frequent or periodic reporting on sales, usage, lifetime value, just all types of reports that would span every department. And even though I was comfortable with SQL, or very comfortable with SQL, there were still some pain points in that I'd run a report once and then I'd export that to Excel and manipulate it there, and send that out to a member of the team, and then whether it was hours later, a week later, ultimately that report would go stale. And since I was really the only person in the company who was going directly to the database, other than the engineers, I was in pretty high demand to go and get that data again and keep it current and refreshed for any of my colleagues who needed that data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe Jeff, I'll just go back to this image for a second. You and John DeGoes, the CTO and co-founder, kind of looked forward and realized that you could compress some of these steps and keep it all in a platform or a solution, so that you weren't getting the data and then going to a different system and manipulating it and then going to another system to kind of share it. The history of kind of companies and technology for the last 20 years has been, putting together a report is, 5 people's jobs. But now SlamData brings that into one solution. You want to talk a little bit about what you observed in the market that led you to the conclusion?
Yeah, I mean, I think if prior to building our solution, and what we still see in the market, and most of the people that find our solution, again, they have some sort of cumbersome multi-step process that they're using to deliver reporting today, whether that's a combination of mapping and ETL, or whether they're doing extraction via native queries and then dumping that into some other form or tool like Excel or something. I mean, these are all different ways people are doing it, and they're, as Michael just pointed out, they're sort of not real time. They're not working against live data. They're in need of constant sort of updating and maintenance and messing with them. And we said, no, you should be able to have a tool that can query and analyze and create visualizations and share those and embed those in your application simply and easily, just like you have had in the relational analytics world for 2 or 3 decades.
Right. Okay. So where were we? So we were talking about this. We discussed what you were doing, the reports. Maybe it's time to talk about. Well, let's explore the segue for a second. So you had these reports. Mongo goes live. Now you're looking and you're frustrated, and you're faced with what? Learning Mongo query language, or asking one of the developers to take this on? What was the straw that broke the camel's back to go out onto the internet and look for MongoDB analytics?
Yeah, so I mean, relying on the engineers certainly would not have been doable for us. We have a lean team, and their priorities are on development and not as much on the reporting end. So we wouldn't want to slow down our progress for reporting. So it was clear that we had to find another tool that would allow me to get access to the data that I needed. So I started off with different tools like Mongo Chef and RoboMongo. And I don't remember the exact point when I found SlamData, but it felt like a light switch was turned on when I saw that I could keep using my SQL skills and still get access to the database.
Okay, well, it seems like a good time to turn it over to you to share a couple of the reports that you have created and talk us through them. So let me stop my share and let me turn it over to you. So let's see.
Sure.
Looks good.
Okay.
Okay. So I just have a few sample reports to share here. I have many more than this, but I wanted to pull a few that would help demonstrate how I've been using SlamData. The first one is a report that I used with our product team to pull out data specifically on our customers who are using autopay as a feature. We made a big UX change that we hoped would have an impact on the likelihood of people using autopay. And can jump to that report right now. So this one is fairly simple. I have date range as variables that I set up so that as I change these dates, so June 9th to 19th, I can see what percentage of activations during that time period were using autopay. And we actually did the change on the 18th. So if I push this out, beyond there, we can see we went from the 30% range to over 50%. And the nice thing here is that I was able to share this with our CEO, with our product team, and the report could be accessed at any time. These date ranges could be, changed daily to go in and see the impact of the change. And I have down at the bottom these different tabs where you can see week by week our activations that included autopay, and then the percentage of those activations that include autopay. So you can see, very clearly the difference that we had. And really both elements of this were important, because being able to see, weekly where we were before as we were making the plans for that change, and where we were afterwards, was helpful. But also, even in 2-3 days after the change, we wanted to see the impact right away, and looking at weekly data wouldn't necessarily show that. So this was really helpful for everybody involved. And it was really easy to set up as well.
Okay.
So for each of these decks or sections, I'll just back up here a little bit. I'd often start with some markup to create variables for date range, write some SQL utilizing those variables. In this case, zoom out a little bit so you can see it. I was getting the exact number that I wanted to display in the report, but I could use chart functionality within SlamData to make it, bigger and easier to see. And I did the same thing with these bar charts here at the bottom, setting up the data and then mirroring from tab to tab, so that only at the end was I changing what information would be reflected in the charts. So it was really doing the work once and then kind of replicating it a couple of times after that.
Okay, so those underlying cards in that deck in the upper right is like a mini workflow, really custom to what US Mobile is doing and what you wanted to visualize. So I imagine once the product team identified this, then can you talk a little bit about the iterative nature of developing this? Did it start off with some ad hoc queries and you iterated until you found the data and then kind of built it out visually? How long did that take, and what level of expertise did you have to have to do it?
So I'm very familiar with where the data is in our database, so it often doesn't take as long to figure out what data I need. But when doing this, it is a bit iterative. I do spend some time figuring out what variables are going to be important to this type of report. In this case, I only did these date ranges, but if I wanted to be more granular about, what types of customers are using autopay, I could have done that. So I could have put in, a form which allowed the end user to see, people who are on autopay with data only plans or talk, text, and data plans. I could have allowed, if we were going to do anything from a marketing perspective, reaching out to customers who are not on autopay. I could have put in a query and a download link to access, a list of customers who are not on autopay who we might want to reach out and communicate our changes.
Okay, so as the author, you set this up, and can you talk about how you share it?
Yeah, so when I share any of these reports, I'm just flipping the deck up here in the upper right, and often I'm publishing and sharing this link within the company. We have single sign-on authentication with Google. So there are only a few people in the company who have access to the editable versions of these reports. But when I share it with some of my colleagues who don't have the permissions to edit, that's not a big deal for them, because what they see is just, they still see these form elements. The data still pulls directly from the database in real time when they run the reports.
Okay. So back to the stack and the workflow that you mentioned. So SlamData allows you to really do as much or as little, totally customize the report as you see fit. You could make it a little interactive, a lot interactive, and change it based on what the feedback is that you get from the users. Have you seen that in other solutions? Or is that something that you introduced to the reporting that US Mobile offers its teams? Like, did you have that in your first version?
No. So this was especially this interactive, kind of do it yourself for my colleagues. That was something that we did not have before, and it wasn't even something that when I first saw SlamData was the selling point. That was really the SQL, being able to keep using SQL, but it's certainly grown to be an extremely important feature of the tool. So I could jump ahead to this other report that I created for our business development team, and this is entirely interactive. Our biz dev team needed to identify customers who were using US Mobile for non-standard phone devices. We have customers who use our service in alarm systems, GPS trackers, pretty much any kind of connected device. And the team wanted to see who was using them, what they were using, and reach out to some of those customers so that they could learn more about those use cases and possibly create partnerships that we could expand the business with those other types of devices. So I created this report where, again, they could look at how recent the customer is in terms of when they first activated, the status of their line, whether they're active or not. Then there's a search field. So right now I have alarm, and I can see the different lines that are being used in different alarm systems. But if I was the biz dev team, I could change it to GPS, and it would instantly change the report so that they could see the different people who are using this report in their GPS, or using our service in their GPS devices. And then the biz team often uses spreadsheets or other lists of information for reaching out. So I was able to create this little download button where whoever's in the preview list here would be downloaded into a CSV, and they could take it from there.
So can you tell us what the biz dev team was doing, I don't know, 8 months ago or prior to SlamData? What kind of report did they get, and did they complain a lot, or were they getting enough to do what they wanted to do, and now they're fully equipped to pursue business opportunity?
So prior to this, I think either one of two things would happen. Either there would be a very specific request. So, they would say, can I have a list of all customers who are using US Mobile and GPS? And I would pull that information and send it to them. And if they needed updated information, they'd have to contact me, and I'd have to pull the information again for them. So it would either be that, where they would not have all that other information, around alarms or any other types of devices that they might want to pursue, or they would give me a really broad request, like all all names of all lines for all of our customers, and then I'd be pulling a very large CSV file and sharing it with them, and then they would have to slice and dice it in Excel as they needed. In this case, they're able to quickly change it, quickly see how many people are in any given filter, and just export what they need when they need it.
So what was the response with that team when you delivered this? Were they part of the iterative process, or did you break this out and say, ta-da?
So this was a bit iterative. I'm pretty sure I did not have that download button initially in there. So that was something that they quickly pointed out, that just having this data in a report was not the end point for them. So luckily that only took me 5 seconds to go and add that button to it. But the other thing that came out of this, because this was one of the first reports that I created for them, was that quickly there were a whole bunch of other ideas about what kind of information they needed and how interactive that information or that reporting could be on that information. So it actually led to a whole bunch more requests, which ultimately is a good thing, even if it's more work for me to set them up.
Yeah. As people who spend time thinking about optimal business intelligence, business analytics reporting, it's like music to our ears that it was a collaborative process, and you build it, and then it scales to meet everyone's needs, and that's the way it should be done. We've all experienced the pain of waiting for the IT department to do the update and waiting, and it's time to kind of move on from that. So can you expose a little bit about the construction of this through the cards? And then we'll move on to the third.
Sure. So you can see at the bottom all these dots. So there's quite a few cards that are involved here. So I'll just go all the way back to the beginning. So similar to the other report, I was starting with some markup. So in this case, I had the date ranges as well as the status of those lines. Then I had my SQL query. Then I previewed the data just so I could have an idea what it looks like. Sometimes I utilize cache if I have a bunch of different queries in same report to make things a little more fast and efficient. Then I have my search function, and finally I have the data. So all of these different sections are, creating a mirror at any point in the process. So I created a mirror set up at the search function so that I could see the search, but then continue on with this deck to show the data. And then this download one would just be going a few steps further to set up download. I could name the file and show the download button. So that's how easy it was when the team came back and said, can we export this to Excel? It was that quick to make that change.
All right, so let me ask you about the skills that you've developed to be able to do these things really quickly. I don't remember setting up any specific training. Was it easy to learn SlamData and to be able to pull these reports off?
Yeah, it was really easy. I definitely spent some time in the docs when I first got started, and in fact, I think I spent quite a bit of time reading the docs even before I actually got it connected. So I was pretty clear on how it all worked, and it's pretty user friendly in terms of being able to see what functions are there, and some of the ones that didn't quite make sense to me, just clicking on them and experimenting with them made it pretty clear how it worked. One of the functions that I use frequently, which I mentioned, was the mirror, and that was something I didn't get quite off the bat, but I think it was in one of the videos I found online that I noticed that functionality was being used, and then immediately, thought of all the different ways that I could benefit from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out here that Michael's not a developer. Today the world of NoSQL and MongoDB analytics is a developer world, because at a bare minimum you're writing to their APIs to at least extract data if you wanted to just try to extract it as CSVs and throw it into Excel, which is obviously not a great solution, since that's what Michael's company was doing prior, and obviously not having great results. So, that's one of the key elements, is that, SlamData is designed to be used by normal people, product people and analysts and marketing people and people in a company that aren't, developers.
Right, that's a good point, and I was thinking myself about the nature of the real time, and how it might be. It's worth taking a second to explain that when the report changes, that a query is executed on that data as it is, and the results give you near real time insight into what's happening. That is not possible with other solutions. Can you talk a little bit about that, Jeff? That's something that SlamData worked years on, perfecting that ability to understand the data upon mounting the database. It's magic to most people, but maybe you could take 30 seconds and explain that. Michael, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, sorry. I was on mute.
Okay.
Sorry, I was trying to keep background. I was just saying the core value of the solution is that we understand the data as it exists in Mongo, and it doesn't require mapping and extraction and flattening and all the other things that are required in order to use a traditional, BI tool, ClickView, Tableau, Power BI, things like that. Those are great tools, but in order to use them with something like MongoDB, you have to go through a tremendous amount of preparation and work on the data, again, that involves extracting it and flattening it and mapping it into a fixed schema, which is not the way MongoDB is designed. So the biggest value of what we're doing is allowing people to save all that time, effort, and money that they would spend doing mapping and flattening and things like that. And then, as I said, open it up to normal people. Non-developers can now start doing things. And you're not going to have a product person or a business analyst doing ETL, building an ETL engine to pull data out of Mongo. That's just not going to happen. So we're opening up the world of NoSQL analytics to regular business people.
Okay, great. So Michael, this is the third report you're sharing. Can you tell us who's using this and why you built it?
Yeah, so our company launched just a couple of weeks ago a new product, which is an unlimited Wi-Fi plan, which allows you to connect to over 30 million Wi-Fi hotspots around the world, as well as get connected on in-flight Wi-Fi on all the big airlines, both in the U.S. and abroad. And we launched this product on a really tight deadline. Our engineers were working, pretty much around the clock to meet the deadline to launch it. But that meant that they didn't get to spend as much time working on our admin side and exposing the information that, let's say, our customer service might need to troubleshoot any issues or identify information as customers might be contacting us. So this was something that, the day after we launched, we noticed, people were coming to our team and asking, how to, switch their Wi-Fi plan from one device to another, or they needed to re-enter, their voucher code, and that information was in the database. And unless we had our engineers build something for them to get it, the SlamData offered a really quick way for me to expose that data and share it with the team. So in this case, I was able to create a report of our Wi-Fi orders, showing just the statuses, so we could keep track of how many of the plans had been activated, how many were still pending, how many, if any, had been canceled. And then for our customer service team, whenever they got a call, they could go in and get the information that they needed about the subscriber. So in this case, I've hidden some of the key information, but if they put in, I think I'm not connected anymore. If they put in the information that they needed there, they could find that user. They could turn off or turn on, whether they were looking for, I'll refresh, canceled users, and find the data that they needed instantly, even if the customer had just signed up, a minute beforehand. And so that was something they were able to use, the minute after I created it.
So that's almost touching all departments, right? It's like a multidisciplinary approach to reporting that's sometimes focused on marketing or business development, product management, customer service, even engineering, all the way to the executive team.
Yeah, and in fact, in some cases, I might create something like this, and that might give the engineering team, a breather, so that they can, the things that are really important that we do need in our admin, built in, custom built, they can have a little bit of time to be able to figure out the best way to do that, while I've created really an app that can serve in the interim.
Yeah, this demonstrates what we started in our marketing to identify as a data application or analytics application builder. This is not your report or a chart being created off basic rows and columns. You're attacking the data and sculpting it, creating the right view, and then building interactivity around it to meet the needs of the end user. So let's talk a little bit at a high level, as we've seen these three use cases and understand the broader context. When you think about analytics and business intelligence for the business, are you getting materially better reports than you did prior to SlamData?
Yeah, I think without a doubt. I mean, we still have reports that I built that are not interactive, and they might serve as dashboards or trend lines for the business, or ad hoc queries where the information is just pulled and shared as it is, not necessarily configured, but the ability to do both. And particularly the ability for that information to be, refreshed whenever needed, gives us a lot more flexibility, and allows us to keep a lot more consistent eye on what's happening with our business and the data that we have.
Okay. And can you talk about the contrast between the before and the after in terms of distribution and sharing? Has that added, enhanced the discussions, enhanced the understanding of where the business is right now? Because we put a lot of time and effort into building out that ability to share and even embed.
Yeah, absolutely. In many cases, especially with the interactive features, I'm able to share a report, with any team. It could be the finance team, and give them a few options for it to be interactive. And that actually leads to fewer questions coming back to me, because they can see, when they change certain elements of the report, what the impact is, and that helps them understand what they're looking at better than if I just send over an Excel sheet. So this is definitely, made, I think, everybody, more informed about the information and what's being shared by me.
Okay, that is super helpful. And off the cuff, what kind of time savings are you achieving? Have you done an estimate, or are you now doing advanced reporting that maybe is taking you additional time but giving you a lot better results? How do you quantify a return on investment? I guess that's a better way of a better question.
It's hard to put a number on it, but I would say that in general, the process of querying and building reports is something that I continue to do, on a daily basis. But the important change that's happened has really been that I'm building new reports. I'm looking at new queries on a daily basis, rather than setting reminders to rerun reports every day. And that amount of time saving that I've had from being able to create a report once, share it with a team member, and then not have to think about it again, because they're the ones who are refreshing, they're the ones who are filtering or exporting the data as they need it. And that could be happening on a daily basis if it wasn't for, that could be on my plate on a daily basis if it weren't for some of these sharing features that SlamData has.
Okay. We earmarked some time to talk about some future use cases, but we had a bunch of questions, so I want to make sure we get to those before 3 o'clock. So, and these questions might be for Jeff or you. The first one is, how much prep work went into getting the schema right? If it changes, how do you keep up with those changes? It's probably Jeff. Do you want to take that one?
Well, sure. I think either of us could take it because Michael's doing it. But SlamData determines the schema dynamically. So there is no prep work. There is no effort at all. When we connect to the database, we determine the schema dynamically. As the schema changes, we adjust as it adjusts. So there's no work to do there. That's why we eliminate all that mapping and ETL and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I would just add, when we added our Wi-Fi plans, it was just, there one day, and there was no setup or thought about it in terms of getting it into SlamData.
Okay. Michael, you're not actually embedding in an intranet yet, but Jeff, embedding is a huge part of SlamData. Can you talk about how that works?
Yeah, any report that you create can either be shared internally via link sharing, both securely or just via a regular link. But we also allow you to essentially one-click embed this inside an app and then securely expose that to the outside world. So, to potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions of customers that, depending on the nature of your application. So you're, as a developer, you're not out there building secure APIs and all the kinds of things that you would do if you were trying to build this custom, from scratch. You just simply click and embed it into your app, and it becomes a live report inside of your existing SaaS application.
The next question is it multi-tenant? Can you describe some of the product features around that, Jeff?
Yeah, sure. It's fully multi-tenant. So it's designed specifically for companies trying to deliver SaaS solutions, data products, as we often refer to them, to large numbers of customers, which can be both individual end users, consumers, if you will, or even just individual corporate clients. So if you're building a healthcare app and you've got 50 different hospitals using it and they all need to be able to access your data securely, we provide that out of the box.
Okay. This next one could be either. Do you run this on production? So let's ask Michael, how do you set this up? Are you hitting your production database or something set up for analytics?
So when we first launched it, I just wanted it up and running as quickly as possible to test it out. So it was on production, and then we set up a replica so that we could lighten the load a little bit.
Yeah, and for anybody that's on the webinar kind of new to Mongo, one of the nice things about it is you can create replica sets really easily and very quickly. And setting up a dedicated replica for doing analytics is a popular way to use a tool like ours.
Okay. The next question is, how is the work different relative to ETL flattening the schema that gets outdated?
Sure. Well, I mean, it sort of by definition eliminates that. When you're doing ETL, you're basically extracting the data from the source, in this case, MongoDB. You have to go through and create a process to flatten that all into a fixed schema and then move that to some other location, whether that's a relational database or, Amazon Redshift or something like that. And that is work, and you have to invest in ETL software, and you have to maintain all those mappings. So every time that schema changes, and that's very common in NoSQL databases like Mongo, then your ETL mapping breaks. And so if you talk to people that have done this, they spend a lot of time maintaining ETL mappings, because every time the schema changes, or the example Michael gave a minute ago, if you built an ETL process and when they added those wireless plans for their new product, you would have had to go back and rebuild that ETL process to account for that. We make all that go away. We just account for the fact that those new products or the new Wi-Fi plans became data in the system, and they're there and available for us to query.
Okay. So Michael, maybe you could weigh in. What's the difference for your business, for a SaaS business, understanding data that's or detecting changes in the business right now versus 3-4 days lag? Is there a big business value to having it now?
Yeah, there always is. I mean, we have a pretty complex business that is, providing talk, text, and data, now Wi-Fi service, around the clock, and the data that we have in our database, needs to be there around the clock and in real time. So, just the nature of our business kind of requires it, even though before SlamData we didn't necessarily have it.
Yeah, I think in terms of your customer service, I mean, that always has to be real time. People are buying and changing and asking for support. If you don't have real time data, then you're out of sync with them. The next question, why is SlamData solution a better option to get these analytics? Is it ease of development, or the changes with changes to schema, ... I think this is something we've touched already, but maybe approach it more simply. Or Jeff, how do you want to take that? Why is SlamData the better option to get these analytics?
Yeah, because there's several reasons. One, it doesn't require developer resources. That's one of the biggest challenges today is, and I think Michael touched on this earlier, companies want their developers focused on adding core features to their products and their solutions, not, writing queries and hooking up charting libraries and building all kinds of custom reporting software. That's not as value added. I mean, obviously reporting is important, but that's just not where they want to spend their resources. So, we allow non-engineers to be able to do the kinds of things that Michael just showed very easily. So I think that's a key element. We also, just in terms of how quickly you can do it, if we've shown some examples, and we didn't show this today, but in the case of MongoDB native queries, sometimes those queries are literally hundreds of lines to do relatively simple things, and we replace that with a handful of lines of SQL or even a visual query. So it's about really getting the right resources focused on the right tasks. It's about time to value or time to insight when you think about analytics. And then it's about future flexibility as well too. If you're building something custom, not only are you using developer resources to do that, but then once you've done that, you're stuck with it. You're maintaining that forever, and every time someone needs a change, somebody's gonna have to go back in and start digging around. We've built all that plumbing and infrastructure for you in the SlamData app, so that if you need to make a change or make an addition, you just do it in a matter of minutes. And I think Michael demonstrated that several times in his reports that he showed us, where he was able to go back in and add a new feature or a new capability in a few minutes. So it's really those things. It's about resources, it's about time to value, time to insight, and then sort of future cost of ownership, if you will.
Okay, well, that covers the questions. We have 2 or 3 minutes left, and let's go back to what we had planned, which is to ask Michael, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to addressing in the next 12 months from a business intelligence standpoint? What do you want to start seeing in the reports? What are you going to pursue?
I know for us that it's been great having access to all this data in MongoDB, but we do still have data in other places, whether it's our legacy SQL database or Elasticsearch, or even some tracking tools like the Google Analytics or Mixpanel, and being able to connect all those data sources with the data that we have in MongoDB would be something we'd be looking to do over the next few months or year.
Okay, so in some ways, it was a loaded question, but we also discovered that it coincides with our roadmap and our other use case in opposite order. A lot of people come to SlamData for this particular use case, which is exactly what you just described. And so, Jeff, maybe you could talk a little bit about that and maybe mention some things in the roadmap that even make this more faster and easier.
You bet. So there's a few things that are exciting coming, yet this year. So we're always adding support for new data sources. Today we support the NoSQL data sources I mentioned before, MongoDB, Couchbase, MarkLogic, as well as Apache Spark. But we're also adding this year support for PostgreSQL, and then we'll continue to add support for additional SQL sources as well. And then, one of the common use cases that allows is for people to basically be able to combine data from multiple different sources, as Michael was just pointing out, and then create, essentially what we call a data hub as a way of getting that, sort of customer 360 or product 360, or just creating that sort of global view for your company.
Okay. Great. That takes us to 2:59. I'd like to say thank you to everybody who joined as attendees, and also to Michael and US Mobile for being so thorough in your sharing for us and for our community, and Jeff for your time and for building this this product that's unique in the market. Everybody who's on the who's registered or attended will get a replay. And I'd ask that you share it across your company. If you have any questions, send them to chris@slamdata.com. And I think that's it. Jeff,
Yeah,
Michael?
thanks for everybody.